Everyone, it's 3 questions with Millicent Dickey. There we go. All right. So I'm like really excited to catch up with you, my friend, because I saw you in summer. You were Clover, South Carolina. You're a school district, right? I gotta give the people in Clover a little shout out.
Yes, indeed. They all need a shout out. They need lots of love. Definitely give them lots of love.
They were so wonderful. I actually remember it was my first speaking engagement after moving to Florida. And I told them that, and they were like, "Oh!" And then why did you move to Florida? And I remember that whole conversation. And people were like, coming up to me, and it was like, and I was just saying to you before we even started recording, we're recording this in September, and this was like middle of July.
Yes,
and it felt like 10,000 years ago. So long ago. So I just want to say shout out to all of them because they were there and you know what? I even got a little. Let's see if I got my applause button. Yeah, I got my little applause button for coming in. Right. So Clover. So it's good. So for people who don't know Millicent, she is actually the Chief Academic Officer with Clover, South Carolina. Clover, is it Clover School District?
Clover School District, yes. We are not a county school district. We are associated with just the town.
Yeah, and it was really wonderful to meet you. And we're going to talk about the PD Day, some of the stuff that we did in our other podcast. But not only are you the Chief Academic Officer there, I know you taught there. You also were a student there. You've lived there all your life. So you have lots of experiences. So I'm really fascinated to hear about, me talking about change and you being in a place the same and like, the same place for a while and kind of like how you see those things kind of intersecting. But let's talk about some of your inspirations from your educational career. Millicent, when you think of a teacher who really inspired you, and it's going to be kind of interesting because it's probably a teacher that maybe lives in the community still. Who knows, right?
Yes, she does.
I love it. Who is a teacher that inspired you and why?
So the teacher that inspired me's name is Mrs. Shirley Grayson. And she was my English language arts teacher in what you all now call middle school. But when I grew up, it was junior high. 7th and 8th grade was junior high. And she was my English language arts teacher then. And the thing that I think most inspired me about Miss Grayson is that everybody loved her. Now, granted, she was firm. She wasn't a pushover by any stretch of the imagination. She wasn't. But everyone loved her. And she inspired you to want to be better and to do your best all the time. She had lots of creative ways for teaching vocabulary and making stories interesting and making novels interesting to my junior high school self at that time. And I just can't really say enough about her. When I think about teachers who really go the extra mile in helping to inspire students, who really want students to succeed and to do well, and just figuring out the creative way to make sure that she was going to cement your learning. You weren't going to leave her class not knowing something. She is my role model of a rock star teacher. She was personalized learning before it existed. So, so I just want to say, shout out to her. Hopefully she's doing well and whatnot, because she still lives here. But I will indeed say she was truly a rock star.
Shirley Grayson, if you are listening or if you're watching, love it.
Or if somebody sees her often, please tell her that she still gets lots of flowers. Yes,
I'm sure that's awesome. And it's actually really interesting because, people know I like to joke around and mess around and stuff like that. I'm very firm with my kids. Like I'm very right, and but they also know I love them. And I think a lot of people kind of have this misconception that sometimes firm people is an unloving thing, but actually, for me, a lot of times, some of the most strict, sometimes disciplined educators, they do that actually out of love because they want you to excel to something, right? They want you to grow to your potential. And I think a lot of times that's when I've had some really interesting conversations with administrators in the past saying like, if you're not having some of these tough conversations with your teachers, it is actually a disservice to them because you're letting them flounder, and that actually doesn't help them, right? And so like sometimes we have to have that conversation like that is tough to help them. I actually just had on the podcast, I think just yesterday, talking about, she was like kind of like said to her, like, are you sure you want to teach? Right. And it was like kind of like, you gotta think different here, because they saw the potential, but maybe the person wasn't living up to it. Right. But I love that because it shows, right, years later, you remember this. I love that. So speaking about administrators, I know that you are currently chief academic officer, so you are an administrative role, but I'm sure you've worked with principals, different leaders. Who is an administrator that really stuck out to you, whatever the role, wherever they were, whether it's a student, as a colleague? Who's someone you think of and why?
So this is going to kind of probably be a little bit out of the box, but I am a principal's kid. So my mom was an elementary principal. My dad was a middle school, junior high assistant principal. So actually I had them as students. So there's nothing worse than being your junior high self, and you're trying to be cool. You're trying to be your cool self, and your dad is the assistant principal. That is like the worst feeling ever. It's like, no wonder I'm probably like traumatized and scarred for life.
I gotta ask you this. Did you reference him as dad when he's assistant principal?
Yes, I did. Well, I really tried not to reference him at all. I tried to please, like, do not come near me. Like, middle school, junior high lunch, don't come speak to me. We really don't need to have a connection. But he did anyway. So, I mean, it's just, that's okay. But I would say kind of
love that. I love
it. It's a whole nother story. But I would say that my administrative style, I would say, is kind of a cross between my mom and my dad. And so they have just interesting personalities. So if you can imagine, my mom is a little lady. I wish I could throw a picture so you could just kind of see, because I'm a little person too. I'm only 5'1", but my mom is about 4'11". So she always wore high heels growing up and everything, and just was kind of, just straight by the book. So on the flip side, my dad was like 6'1". And so he was 6'1", and imposing at that time, not now, but, 35 years ago, walk into a room. That's kind of a big person, but had a very kind of teddy bear sort of like personality. So I say, as a human being, I'm a pit bull teddy bear mix. And so because my mom was the pit bull, my dad is the teddy bear. I mean, it's just kind of the way that it was. But anyway, so I say I'm a mix between that. But I think kind of a lot of things that I've learned administratively and that I think about and I carry with me every day are cross between things that they did. So my dad was truly about the relationship. Like, he felt like, I'm going to build relationships with kids. I'm going to build relationships with adults. And he never used that word in terms of, like now we talk about building relationships. Like, I try and coach people, you got to build a relationship before you get anyone to do anything. And so my dad was just kind of the master, I think, at building relationships, and just never, always stressed to me the importance of building relationships with everybody, that there was never anybody that you wouldn't just try and build a relationship with in the workplace, and that was very important. So he was teaching me that as a kid, which I thought, okay, that's something that I carry with me today. And my mom is just, I think her lesson, and I don't think but it's always about doing what's right. And so sometimes, she will ask me, sometimes she's my sounding board because I'm not married. So I've got to have somebody to sound off on some of these things when I can't sound off at work. And, she will say, well, is that decision, did that benefit the kids? Or did you do that decision because it was easy for you? Or, what motivated you to make the decision that you did? And so I do take that along with me, that, some decisions are very unpopular, but I'm trying not to think about what works for the moment or what's necessarily popular, but that, 6 months down the road, 6 years down the road, is there an implication from that that is going to be negative for a child? And I don't want that to happen.
I could not. I love this so much. And just wait, we got to give a little shout out. That's awesome. One of the best superintendents I ever worked for is that like I've never like is exactly what you described, but I've never thought of the description. It's getting her pitbull. Yes. And she was, and I love this because she was very visionary. She's very, and I'm like, look, do not get on her bad side. I just know.
Do not get on the bad side.
But if you're on her good side, it was amazing. And it wasn't like she didn't go looking to like get you on her bad side. Like if she felt you were messing up with the future of kids, you would know. She would make sure that would be straightened out real quick, right? And I appreciated that about her, and it really was something that really mattered to me. And I think one of the things that you said really kind of regards to your mom. I think a lot of times when we're making decisions in education, it's really easy to do what you said is what's popular right now, and could like make us look good right now. But long term, it can actually hurt the kids. And sometimes the decisions we're making, and there's so many facets of life that this is true in, and we won't go into them, but I'm sure people can figure this out, where he's like, say, hey, this make us look good right now.
Right.
But long term, it can actually hurt people. And that's, something that's reality. So I love that mix. I love that mix. I think it is so important too, right? Because like you and I were talking before, for me, when I had to make a tough decision, the thing I always try to do is get your ego out the way. What is best for kids? And then if it's hard, you will be able to sleep at night. You'll be able to sleep at night. But if it was about your ego and you're like wrestling around, you might have done this for the wrong reason.
Right.
Yeah.
That's exactly
right. All right. So last question. I love that answer. I love that answer. So last question. You have been in Clover pretty much your whole educational career. I don't want to say teaching career because it's like you were there as a student. 1 year you were somewhere else.
Yes.
So you look back on your career. I'm sure that there's things you're like, wow, I wish I would have done something different then. Right. What advice would you give to your like first year teacher self if you go back and talk to that person?
Oh goodness, there's so much I would give to my first year teacher self. That is just that's unreal. But I really think that the thing that I would tell my first year teacher self is never stop learning. Mm-hmm. And so I do think it's important to be in those places where and spaces where you learn and surround yourself with people who are willing to learn. If you are the only person on your team that is still willing to learn and still willing to give it your best, you're probably on the wrong team. And if you really want to stay in the education field, you need to talk to your principal about putting you with somebody who wants to still learn and wants to still give it their all. My superintendent and I were having a conversation because she heard it on the radio. I read it in an article about this thing called quiet quitting, and how now that people have the mindset of there's only so much they're going to do and they're not going to do any more. And so if you are in that space where you're no longer learning, or you're around a bunch of people that are quiet quitting, that is not going to bode well for our world going forward. So always continue to learn and advocate for yourself to be in a space with people who want to learn too, who are not content with doing it the same way that they did it last year and the year before that and the year before that. You always have to be hungry to learn. And I think about that now and I think, I could probably retire now. I'm close enough to it, but do I really want to? And I'm not at the point where I'm quiet quit. Like I'm still excited every day. And I think about what is it that we want to do next to make sure that kids have a better life when they leave us. And I just say, always be in the position where you're always willing and ready to learn.
Well, like it's kind of like the old adage of like, you're the average of the 5 people you surround yourself with. And I totally agree with that. Right. Like, I've had lots of conversations in the past that a lot of teachers have left the profession, not because they they hated it is because they felt they weren't being challenged, that they had outgrown their organization,
For
and
sure.
that people didn't like, if you have that principle that just stays out of your way,
Mhm.
eventually that's gonna come back to haunt you, right? You want people to kind of push you. There's something that
Yes.
you said though that reminded me of something, because you said about, I still want to learn, right? I could retire. I
Exactly.
don't want to, because I still want to grow and still want to get better.
Right.
So years ago, I was you'll get a kick out of this, because I know you see me talk. So I was actually at an event, and I talk about innovation, moving forward, new ways of thinking about teaching and learning. And so there's a gentleman there, one of the nicest guys, just super nice gentleman, right? And he was like, kind of like not really into what I was saying. He was struggling with it. Very nice. We had great conversations. And so he's like, I don't know, do I really want to do this? And he's kind of resistant to it. And so about a month later, someone from that organization, they emailed me and they said, hey, do you remember that guy, that superintendent who, or I think it was a principal, that principal that was struggling? Well, he retired, and he actually gave his retirement speech, and he cited you as the reason. So I was like, what?
Oh,
He said, no, it's actually good. So the gentleman, he said, I was thinking about retirement. I was struggling with it, but then George came and said, I'm out. I got to go. And the reason I left, and I thought this was so powerful, he said, the reason I left was, I know the things he's saying. I know we have to do them. I know how important it is. I just don't want to anymore. And I don't want to stay in this position and not grow, because that's not fair to the kids. And I don't want to grow in this anymore. I'm done. But I don't think I should just be here. And just take up a space. I don't want to be retired, but stay here for another 5 years.
Right.
And that was so admirable, that was the way he framed it, and the way he looked at it. And it just reminded me of what you said, right? Like, because you never want to. For me, I want to like finish what I'm doing and go like, oh, he left too early, rather than the opposite, right? Like, oh, he should have left like 10 years ago doing this, right? So. I love this conversation. I can't wait to talk more, Millicent. And it's so great to catch up with you and think about my time
to catch up with you.
And everyone, thank you so much for listening. Make sure you connect with Millicent. You can see the information down below. But thank you again for being on the podcast. I really love chatting with you today.